Hello and welcome back to Jimbo's PC Builds. Today is going to be the first ever build video. Woo! I know, your excitement, it's unpalatable. But anyway, so I did an introduction video on the parts to choose for a beginner's build. So in the first part of the build, I am going to take you through the CPU, the motherboard, and finally the memory. Also, I'm going to take you through beginners basics that you need to remember to be aware of, and a key part of that is making sure you're earthed, because the reason I chose these parts, as I explained in the introduction video, is they're not the most expensive. So if you blow any of these, it is not going to be the end of the world. However, no matter how much money you've spent on them, the last thing you want to do is blow the parts rather than build. So without further ado, let's take a look at what CPU and what motherboard we have and what you've got to be aware of when you're in a shop or you're online and on, say, the likes of Newegg, and you're looking to buy a CPU and motherboard. So there are two major brands of CPU that you will buy from a shop. They are AMD and they are Intel. In this case, this is an AMD CPU. So in terms of pairing a motherboard with a CPU, I'm going to concentrate on what motherboard you need to pair with an AMD CPU. Now, all of the Ryzen processors, of which this is one, work on the socket AM4 platform. Okay, so whenever you buy a motherboard to go with a Ryzen CPU, you need to make sure it's a socket AM4. Now, normally, as this one, I'm not sure if you can see it from all the way over there, but on the box it will say that it's a socket AM4 motherboard. So in this particular case, I've gone for the Gigabyte B450 M, which is, as I mentioned in the introduction video, is a micro ATX board. Now this is a B450 motherboard. Basically, AMD work their chipsets in one of three varieties, and I'm only going to mention two of them because they're the only two worth paying attention to. The X470, X370, X570 series are the ones that are aimed at your high-level enthusiast. Your B350, your B450 and your B550, which is rumoured but not yet announced for AMD, are your mid-tier motherboards. Now, the advantage you're going for a mid-tier motherboard is you get all of the main features you get for the enthusiast without the cutting edge, bleeding edge. And if you're not going to be doing what's called overclocking, which we're not going to cover today, but if you're worried about that, then you've got to go for the X platform. For everybody else, for all those normal people, you can go for the B450, B350 platform. Now, the reason I've chosen B450 instead of B350 is we know for certain that the B450 platform is going to be, will work, should I say, with the next generation of Ryzen CPUs. Because this is an introductory CPU, but this motherboard can actually take you beyond the introductory CPU. So by buying this one, you may want to, after building this, upgrade to a next generation, more advanced, more expensive CPU from AMD. So this motherboard will give you that flexibility. So these are the things that you've got to watch out for when you're buying them, okay? So now I've gone through what CPU and motherboard you got to get, you then got to keep an eye out for memory. Now, originally when Ryzen came out, it was very particular about the memory it went for. Really, you've got to make sure that it's DDR4 first and foremost. If you're ever in any kind of doubt, if you're in a shop like Micro Center, ask. You can't go wrong if you ask. Now in this particular case with memory, you've got all kinds of speeds and all kinds of stats that come with it. But if you go for DDR4 3000, you cannot go wrong. Pretty much all of them will be compatible with an AMD motherboard these days. But again, if you're unsure, ask. Now, the other thing I'll mention is the amount of memory. Now, you can get away with 8 gigabytes, which normally you always want to get two of something. So if you go for 8 gigabytes, go for two 4 gig sticks. In this case, I've gone for 16 gigabytes, which is two 8 gig sticks. The reason being is memory is such a good place price-wise right now. It doesn't make sense for going any less than 16 gigabytes because 8 gig is seen as the minimum these days, whereas 16 gig is seen as the sweet spot. So that's where I go to. Right, so without further ado, let's get on to building this thing. Now, before we build, put that there, earthing self. Now, as it is, I have got a what's called a mod mat, which is from Gamers Nexus, which is a fantastic channel, by the way, watch it. This comes with a anti-static wristband, which you can earth via a socket to the wall. If you haven't got something like this, if you can get an anti-static strap, what you want to be able to do is get your anti-static strap and clip it to the case. Now, that doesn't do much good if the case isn't earthed itself. So normally the best thing to do is to clip yourself to the case and plug or attach the case to the ground. If you have the case attached to the ground and you clip to it, then you are grounded and you're not going to fry any components. In this case, I've got my anti-static wristband, which came with the mod mat, and I'm good to go. So then let's look at, I'll move these out of the way. Let's have a look at getting our motherboard out. Now, when you open up a motherboard box, you get your manual, always handy, and always read through your manual. Always a step. And then you have your motherboard. It comes in an anti-static box. Now, a lot of people do this, including myself. One of the best places to build your CPU and motherboard on is actually on top of the box itself. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take it out of the bag, and I am going to put it straight onto the box like that. Now, by not having it on the desk, it means that the actual parts themselves aren't directly on ground, which means it won't get as easily fried. So you can see I've laid it out this way, so I've got easy access to the socket, I've got easy access to the memory slots, it's ready to go. Okay, so let's now get the CPU out. Okay, voila, put that over there. Now this CPU is great because it comes with its own cooler, which makes life a lot easier because we don't have to buy one. So the first thing that comes out is the cooler. The second thing that comes out is the CPU. And look, you can get a nice sticker. So let's put this over here. All right. So go to your manual. In the first, one of the first pages in the manual, it will give you instructions on how to install your CPU. So in here, it points out that on the motherboard, you have your CPU socket here, which as we can see we have an arm that lifts up, like so, and then your CPU will go in there, okay? Now the other thing to keep in mind with the CPU, it mentions that there is a gold triangle in one of the corners. That will always line up with the dot that is on the CPU socket. So in the manual, it says, here is the diamond, here is the triangle, it lines up with the dot. So when you put it in, it goes like that. Now installing the CPU, you've got to be a little bit careful, okay? We're going to take it out of its little mini box. It comes wrapped in a sheet of plastic like so, and you can see it's completely sealed, okay? Now when it comes out of the box, you want to try and make sure that the CPU has got its pins down like so. And the reason you want to do that is because you don't want to be touching or trying to bend the pins in any way. So now I'm going to simply put the CPU on the socket. Voila. And you know when it's in because all of the spikes go into the holes and the green board is flush to the CPU socket. Once it's in, I'm going to push the arm down slowly and then let it go under its little clip. That is as easy as it gets when it comes to installing the CPU. It's now in its home, okay? Now that we've done that, we then need to consult the manual again, and again, emphasis on looking in the manual on multiple occasions about installing the CPU cooler, because they all install in different ways. Okay, where are we? There we are. Now, an AMD CPU cooler that comes with it, which is, for the price of the CPU we're talking about here, is the best one to go with. I think it's called the Wraith Stealth or the Wraith something or other, or... Oh, there we are. Okay, it's a little flat thingy-majigger, all right? Now, when you look at it, you'll notice that it's got screws on each corner, okay? So it needs to screw into something. Now, the AMD CPU, it comes with a mount protector with these 4 screws into the corners, and it comes with a black plate that's attached to that. Now, the CPU cooler goes straight into the back plate. So we want to take that off. So I'm going to grab myself a screwdriver. Voila, 1 screwdriver. By the way, I fixed it. Get a tool set, they're really good. So I'm going to take the bracket off. 1 screw. And with the second screw, the first part comes off. Second screw, third screw even? Yes, can't count. And voila, 4th screw, and it's off. So now you can see that we have the back plate parts sticking through. So one of the next thing we need to do is point out that the Ryzen CPUs come with what's known as coolant installed already. So this is, it's a grey mat on there, and this needs to go directly to CPU. The other thing you need to be aware of is it comes with a cable that goes to the fan controller. So what you want to be looking at is you want to look at your board and find your CPU fan, which is here. Now this will go like so. Now you would be tempted to think, aha, I'll go this way because it goes closer to that, and that would be the right thing to do. So what we're going to do is we're going to slowly but surely line up the CPU cooler with the said 4 holes and then drop it in place. Okay, make sure it's lined up on all sides, and then we're going to screw this bad boy in. Now a key part of this, there we are, I didn't have all 4 in. Story of my life. Okay. Now don't do all 4 tight straight away. Now the reason you don't do that is because if you do 1 too tight, then the 4th one might not go in. And then don't try and do it too tight. Once you feel some tension, then you are good, because if you screw it too tight, you might end up breaking something. Voila! 1 CPU cooler in place. Now the last part of the CPU installation is you want to put it in a fan controller. Now if you look on the back of the cable header, well, there's 4 holes on the top, and then there's like a bracket on the back. Now if you line up this bracket with the actual 4 pins, there's only one way it can go on. Once you do that, it simply slides on. Now, memory installation, okay? Now memory you've got to be very careful with, because you know it's very vulnerable to static. So go into your manual again, and what we're going to be looking at is installing memory. And what it tells you is this is a dual memory configuration, so you want to go for either channel A or channel B, which is either 1 and 3 or 2 and 4, okay? And in a diagram in your motherboard, in your manual, it tells you which is channel 1, 2, 3 and 4. And normally it's also written on your motherboard. If you're in any doubt, just go for odds and evens. So go for odd, odd, even, even. So I'm just going to go with odds. So the best thing to do is on the 2 that you know you're going to put the memory into, do that. So your memory sockets are now open because the arms are ready. Then get your memory out. Okay, this nice piece of cardboard. There it was. Okay, so now they're normally clipped in place in the plastic, so you've got to open these carefully. So push from underneath and the side, voila, memory sticks. Now you've got to be careful with memory because there's a hole right in the middle. So you've got to make sure you line that up with the little arm that's in the middle. Once they are seated, push until you hear them click. That is the first stick in. Oh, lovely sticker as well. Okay, so there's our second stick. Again, we're going to make sure this is lined up. The CPU cooler is making this a little bit more difficult. But don't worry. Just make sure that you get it in properly. Again, story of my life. Oh, not in properly. Right, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to swap sockets. Because if you haven't got enough room, there's no point in pushing it all the way. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this one in socket 4. And I'm going to put the one I originally put in socket 3. I'm going to put that one in socket 2, like so. So they are both now clipped in. So literally, that is now your CPU, motherboard, and memory assembled. How easy was that? Way! You're thinking, we're done now? No, we're not done. Next, and the next video, we're going to cover installing the motherboard in the case, installing the storage in the case, and then beyond that we're going to be installing the power supply in the motherboard, wiring everything up, and then testing. Alright, well that was the first part of the build videos. If you liked it, give it a thumbs up. If you didn't like it, don't watch again, but do give a thumbs down. Critical feedback is always welcome, so with that in mind, give us plenty of comments. If you want to come back for the next installment of the thrilling, yes, build video, then subscribe, hit the bell notification to get a notification when the next video is up, when I'm able to get it made, and we will see you in the next one. Thank you very much, and take care.